Shalom. So today we are going to understand self. What happened is that our enemies they did study us. We did not study ourselves, and because of this we are ignorant of the enemy's devices, the devices of the adversary, right? Because we never took the time out to really understand ourselves. So today we're gonna look at how we function, what causes certain things are, how they should um, actually operate, and we use them otherwise, right? For example, we all know about the mind, right? What do we use our minds to do? You know, what is the function of the mind, or why was it given to each of us, right? So, the mind is really how we communicate with the outside world. We have an internal world and an external world, right? So we know reality, which most of us call God, right? However, because we are mortals, we are humans, we are limited, and the Most High is infinite, right? There's no limit to Him. So what happens is we don't really know what actual reality is. So because of the mind, what we do have is just a perception of reality. So we only perceive the outside world from inside, right? And how do we do this? We do sense perception. So the mind perceives through seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and feeling, right? So this is basically how we protect ourselves, like in danger. For example, if you see a bear or a tiger coming, you know to protect yourself, to cover yourself. If you hear like gunshots, you know that okay, that's unsafe. So that's what the mind is basically used for, to perceive things from the outside. However, because what we perceive can be different from what is actually real, this needs an important process. But before we do get there, when we perceive the data, the first thing when it comes inside is that we have to save all those perceptions. So we save the perceptions in our memory. This is why, for example, if you meet someone and you have a deep conversation, guess what? Especially if that is actually a higher level of knowledge than what you already known, right? What happens is that you're just perceiving everything the person is saying, but later when you get home or get into your quiet space, you start to play back the conversation, right? So you pull it back from your memory where it is stored, and then you start doing what? No, you start to analyze. Oh, yes, the person said this, he said that, yes, it makes sense. So what you're actually doing now is, after you pull up things that you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, now you start to do what? Analyze. So say, yes, what the person said made sense or not, right? So this is what we have to analyze between one thing or the other, right? And the light that shines through our intellect, that light, we call it knowledge, knowing. right? Not knowledge as how in this Western culture we define, okay, to know something, right? This is a different type of knowing, right? So the light that shines through the intellect is the light of pure knowing. It's discernment, right? So no, you can tell the difference. Like for example, when you just started growing up in this culture, you thought that and you believe that the day starts 12 o'clock in the night. But then you get into knowledge, know your understanding, oh, the day and the night are separated, right? So that's that discernment and that knowledge coming into practice, right? Now, how this actually work, where changes are concerned, right? When you pull up your, get into your memory that what you've been taught is that the day starts at midnight, you get into that memory, you pull up that data, and then you erase it that the day started at midnight, you erase that from the memory. Now you accept that, oh, the day starts at dawn. You know, you read Matthew 28 verse 1, it says, at the end of the day and the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day. Now you understand that, oh, day starts at dawn. So this now is going to be the new knowledge that is stored, right? So what happens why a lot of us do not change is because we hold on to the old information, the old details, the old beliefs, because of this person right here. And this is an adversary to the light of the knowledge, right? So this is this false ideology, belief, feeling, thinking, everything about this is unreal, it's unrealistic. It does not deal with the logics of the intellect, right? So the function of this is really to obstruct knowledge, right? So this is always the adversary of this. So now what you do with the information here is you analyze it, you discern here, right? So that's the processing. When you start to process your perception, now what we normally do is whenever we think or feel or anything, right? Once a thought comes to our mind, it's automatic that we jump into actions, right? The body is what emotes. So emotions and actions take place in the body because of this. The mind, the body is an extension of the mind. This is why whatever you think in your mind is exactly what you're going to feel in your body, right? That's what your experience is going to be. So if you think about something that is sorrowful, sad, whatever, your experience in the body is going to be sad, right? If you think about something that gives the happy feeling or emotion, your body is going to feel the same way. You cannot think one thing and experience the opposite emotion. It does not work like this. This is why whenever we think of a thought, it's always important to analyze the thought before we take actions. Because of this here, this creates the most problems in our lives, and this is our true adversary. And through this is where the spiritual demonic adversary operates from, right? Again, this is why sometimes you will say you want something, but in reality, you go for the direct opposite of what you said you want. You said you wanted vegetables because you are working on your health and diet, but you keep going towards the hot wings, the spicy wings, the chips, the potatoes, you know what I mean? All those unhealthy foods because of this, right? So back to this over here, you analyze the thought first, and then you take an action, and that is where you get dominion over yourself. Once you can use this to say no, but this is wrong or this is right, then you take an action. If it's right, you can act on its behalf. But if it's not right, if it goes against your moral principles, standards, or lawful things, then you would know not to do it regardless of how you feel. When we feel a certain sense emotions in our body, what we do is we go directly to that emotion and we take actions from there on behalf of the ego. And this is why we create more problems than the problems that were already there, right? Because we do it absent analyzing that, oh, this that I'm feeling came from this thought, and this thought came from my ego, right? So this is why we have a lot of problems understanding ourselves, understanding how to process our emotions, because we always keep out the most important part, right? And as you know, because the intellect deals with logic, a lot of people cannot relate to logic, right? Because their emotional nature is stronger than this part of them, right? Now, these things happen at different layers because, like I'm talking now, you are perceiving what I'm saying, right? So everything here is operating above the surface, which we call the conscious level, right? But beneath that is a different layer. So you have the unconscious level, right? So for example, your intellect, where you're discerning things, you do this at the conscious level. But after a while, like for example, 2 weeks from now, this video, you might be analyzing it just the same way, right? So because this is recent, it's not long ago, it's not like 15, 20 years ago, it's recent. So this is going to be happening again at the middle level, which is the subconscious level, and you're still discriminating, right? You're still trying to discern the knowledge because you pulled it from the memory, right? So physically, you might be at work, you might be doing something different, but subconsciously, you're still processing this. So this, as you can see, the processing still goes on even if you're not conscious of it. And especially when the thought is negative, because that is what this likes. This likes negativity, right? Someone says something that goes against this, it makes a big deal out of it, blows it out of proportion, right? So you might be physically at work doing a report for the boss, you might be cleaning the house, you might be getting your child ready or getting yourself ready for work or whatever it might be, but this is still going on and you're no longer conscious of it, right? Now when this goes to a deeper layer, this is what happens. It forms a fixed concept. Now let's look at an example of this concept. For example, growing up, your father always tell you that he loves you, but you only see him once in a while, right? Maybe just in holiday time, or maybe you never really connected with him, but whenever you see him or talk to him on phone or whatever, he would say he loves you. Now, we form that concept about what that love should be, that it's okay if the person has never shown us anything, has never done anything to concrete that connection, right? But because they always tell us that they love us, when we get bigger, it shows up into our relationship. So now that we're having a relationship, we just tell people, yes, I love you. Yes, I feel this way about you. However, we are still distant, right? We have that distance emotionally, mentally, spiritually, but just an idea of the word love, right? So this impression, the same concept here, is going to be stored over here. The same concept is going to be right here, right, in the unconscious memory, and we are gonna grow with it. And this is how, we pass on things, right? Because it's gonna pass on to the generations after, because the structure of the ego, these things are coming from mother and father, right? So we are descendants of the curses, and it passes on through the bloodline. The trauma passes on through the bloodline. For the last 500 years, this has been the cycle, right? So most of us will never really have the daddy, the father. Most of the times it's the father. 75% of us as Israelite, we never really had the father there, and we have this fixed concept. And sometimes even it can be how you grew up with your siblings. You understand? You form a fixed concept when it comes down to sharing, because things never went well when it comes down to probably sharing food or money or whatever it is in the home where you had 6, 7 brothers and sisters together. You have a hatred towards a sister, right? Later on, when you go on to have relationship, you're going to feel the same way about the opposite gender, right? You feel a certain way about your mother. Guess what? You grow with that. It builds and builds and builds and builds, and it's going to show up in your behaviors. You cannot, because you have not changed this year. You have not went back. You haven't went back into the memory to pull it up and analyze it properly, so you can store a better impression, or um, something to empower yourself, right? So now you have negative beliefs, negative concept driving your actions, right? So what we do is we divide the world in two because of this. So it's about now how we feel about these things. For example, I like black markers, but I don't like the red ones. You see, everything is about how we feel about them, rather than the function that they actually serve. To say, okay, the black marker is good for this purpose, but the red, when it's necessary, I'll use it to, make brighter prints or so forth. We no longer see things for what they are or their functions. And this is why in relationships, we don't see the opposite gender for the function that they serve. We see them for how we feel about them, which stemmed from slavery, right? It stemmed from how we saw things growing up with our parents. So everything now is based on this, how we feel about them. So here it's again, I like or I don't like. Same thing over here again. Once you do this, the next thing is how you feel about it. I like this. I don't like that. Right? I like I like my woman with natural hair. I don't like women that don't have natural hair. You know, we don't see things and accept them for how and what they are. We see them for how we want to feel about them, and this is why we have so many problems, right? So this again is the same thing that's going to be here, and it's going to be at the unconscious level. Things you like and things don't like, and these are the attachments that we build to things that we're not even aware of. Most of the times we're not aware. For example, you can have an attachment to a certain thing, but you don't realize it until the absence of that. For example, you drink coffee every day, or you eat fruits every day. You take fruits every day to work, and one day you're going to work and then you realize there's no fruit, there's no coffee. Your reaction to not having coffee When you become aware of your reaction, you can look back into yourself and say, whoa, I did not know that I have this attachment. I did not know I have this form of likes for this thing, right? And it's the same thing with relationship, it's the same thing with other objects that we're attached to. Even just a feeling, right? When some of us feel lonely, what we do, we can't be at peace, we can't sit still. So as a relationship ends, guess what? We are looking for that rebound. We are looking for something to make up for what is not there. We are empty, absent that attachment, right? So it's important for us to become aware of these things and become aware of our reaction to things that we don't have. And this is why a lot of us Israelites have so many problems with stress, right? We have so many problems with like high blood pressure and things like that. You can be a vegetarian, you might not deal with meat or anything like that, but you still have these high blood pressure like people who eat a lot of meat. Why? It's all going back to the same thing. So if we can heal our mind, body, and spirit, guess what? We won't go through all these sicknesses, these curses, right? It all comes back to what Paul says about examine self, right? Now, also in the body, we experience different sensations, right? And the sensations also, these sensations also takes us away from ourselves. So, for example, you might be experiencing a certain sensation in your body. What the mind does is the mind start to focus on the sensation and how bad it is, the condition of it, and so forth. Then create its own thoughts out of the sensation, and never, the intellect never had the chance to go back to the root of the thought, right? So probably something that strikes fear into us. We are now focusing on how the sensation is uncomfortable, the discomfort it brings, and taken away with these thoughts, never analyze the thought, right? And then we do what? Suffer. When the intellect cannot make sense of what is, the mind creates its own stories. And these are most of the times absent evidence, absent realistic or rational reasons, right? This is all perception. And we suffer from the thought itself because we keep on skipping out this part, the analyzing part, right? So it's important to really understand how these things work, like parts of the body function where you have no control over, like you breathe while you're sleeping, your everything is working automatically. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to remember to breathe like animals like dolphins and so forth. They have to come up, you know what I mean? We function different. And regarding the animals and us humans, this is what makes the difference. Because we have the intellect, we are able to discern. The animals cannot do that. For example, if you have a dog that attacks a child, you would not say the dog is wicked because the dog does not know better. It does not choose between one thing or the other. It's just operated by the nature, right? Now we have dominion over our nature, right? That knowledge is called the free will. Now you can consciously choose, right? But some of us, we are ruled by our desires, just like animals are ruled by nature. For example, if you just finish your meal and you're totally full, but guess what? You see a cheesecake, you see some um, candies that you like, that irresistible. Guess what? Even though you're full, you're still gonna go ahead and do. So you can go above their nature. Animals don't do that. Animals don't choose between, a dog will not choose between a cheesecake and an apple pie. Humans do it because of this. You divide it, what you like, what you don't like, right? So I hope this here, by understanding how things work, we can learn to understand ourselves, look into ourselves, and fix our old tendencies, our old behavioral patterns, and so forth. Shalom.